Labour's Shadow Education Secretary, Lucy Powell, joins me now from Manchester, and a very good morning to you. Now, let's clear this up as much as we can on the figures, because the Conservatives say you are scaremongering. You're talking about a figure of about 50,000 leaving the profession. They say there are now 13,100 more full-time equivalent teachers than in 2010.
Well, our figures are correct, and I think the head teachers and the unions that you've spoken to today will confirm that there are more teachers having left the profession in the last year than have joined. The number of those leaving the profession, nearly 50,000, is the biggest number since records began. If you ask any head teacher across the country, all will tell you that teacher recruitment is one of their biggest single concerns. And even in somewhere like Manchester, where I am today, and I speak to many head teachers here, where we have high numbers of young graduates and we have high numbers of people going into teacher PGCEs and teacher courses, there is a problem here in Manchester. But then when you get to places like coastal towns and rural parts of the country where it's much harder to attract teachers, the crisis there is absolutely acute. And it's even a problem in places like Manchester, but it's much worse in many of those coastal towns and parts of the country.
It's just to try to get to the heart of the matter, though, for people listening here, because it seems to be in the territory of lies, damned lies and statistics, because this, again, from the Conservatives, saying there are 3% more people due to start postgraduate teacher training than this time last year. And you yourself use the words concerns and problems. It's not a crisis. You're scaremongering.
I'm absolutely not scaremongering, and it really is a crisis. I mean, the context to this is that we are seeing huge numbers of additional pupils coming into the system as well. They are in primary school at the moment, coming into secondary schools, where we're having to see many schools expanding, taking extra numbers. So the figures of the additional number of teachers that we are going to need over the next 3 years, for example, is around 160,000 extra teachers on top of what we have at the moment. So we are falling well short of that. That's why we are seeing such big gaps in timetables and in teachers, particularly in those subjects that are so crucial to the future of our economy, in maths, English, science and modern foreign languages.
Well, give us a prescription then to put it right. What's Labour's policy? Give us a prescription to cut the workload, increase the pay and cut down on the inspections, things like that.
Well, I think the first thing that the government should be doing, and that's why we're calling on them to do that today, is recognise that there's a problem. As you say, they're in total denial that there is even a problem here, saying that the figures we're putting out are wrong. There is a massive problem here, so you've got to confront that problem, and then you need a proper analysis about what's causing it. And I think it's a range of issues. Partly it's about recruitment. We're not attracting enough of those good graduates into the teaching profession. Partly it's about many thousands of teachers looking to leave the profession, which is what we're highlighting today. So we've got to look at how can we better work with teachers to make their jobs rewarding and make them want to stay in teaching, because many of them actually enjoy teaching, but there's aspects of the job that they haven't been enjoying over the last few years. And we've got to look at how we can attract people and continue to attract them by looking at paying conditions and those sorts of issues as well. I think it's a very complex area, but the starting point is recognise there is a problem, and there is now a huge problem in teacher recruitment, and then let's work with teachers to address some of the issues that they raise.
OK, and under Labour, what kind of schools would they be teaching in? Because as we all know, Jeremy Corbyn said during the leadership campaign, no grammar schools. All grammars, he said, would become comprehensives and end the 11+ where it exists. It exists in part in 36 local authorities and fully in 15 of them. It's Labour policy that they would go.
Well, Labour policy remains that we're not going to open any more grammar schools. That's something that the government are currently considering.
Well, you heard what Mr. Corbyn said.
New
would the existing grammars go?
A massive expansion of the grammar school system. Yeah. Labour policy is not to close existing grammar schools. We want the type of schools in the local area to be a choice for parents and local authorities. I want to devolve many of these decisions around schools to local areas. So I can't argue for that at the same time as as giving out a diktat. So Labour policy remains the same on grammar schools, but what I will be fiercely contesting is any expansion of the grammar school system, because you look at the figures of what's happening in grammar schools right now, less than 3% of students who attend the current grammar schools, and there are many, as you just say, less than 3% of those are on free school meals. So these are not the bastions of social mobility that they once were maybe 30, 40 years ago, and that's why we'll be fiercely contesting any measures to bring them back into existence.
Okay, so you're allowed to have that disagreement with Jeremy Corbyn, as we know. Just on the leader, do you think he was right to go on some kind of holiday? It's not precisely clear, but he certainly didn't attend his appointment to the Privy Council. Do you think it was right not to go to see the Queen?
Well, I think he will go and see the Queen. I'm sure he will go and see the Queen. I think it's perfectly normal that when you're appointed to the Privy Council, it takes some weeks to go to your first meeting. I think it took David Cameron, when he was Leader of the Opposition, 3 months to go to the first meeting and meet the Queen and do all of that. So I think he probably has had quite a long summer, and I don't know his holiday arrangements, but that's a matter for him. But I'm sure that he will be going, and he will be taking his full part in the Privy Council. Well,
as an advisor to leaders, a former advisor to the last leader, would you recommend he does?
I'm sure he will, and I absolutely would recommend that he does as well. Yeah.
OK. One last question about, you mentioned we've been talking about grammar schools. I want to ask you about private schools. We know that there are many within your party concerned about the charitable status that they have. Would abolishing that be something on your agenda?
Well, we're going to look at all of these sorts of issues. I think, look, some of the very best private schools have huge amounts of bursaries and work with their local communities to offer places to disadvantaged children and the use of their facilities to disadvantaged children. Manchester Grammar School in my constituency is one such example, but many other private schools don't do that. So we have to look at, is it right that they get that sort of funding if they're not prepared to use their facilities for the local community, or to ensure that they have places available to students who wouldn't otherwise be able to go? They need to justify their charitable status. As I say, many good private schools do that and many don't. So we'll be looking at a range of issues like that, because I think what's absolutely critical at the moment, and we're going to see that in the comprehensive spending review coming up, is that investment in education is absolutely critical to the future of our country and to the future of our economy. The Conservatives are about to slash the budgets of further education and of childcare in early years, and that's something that I think is wrong for the country. So we've got to look at how we can get adequate funding into education. It's critical.
Sorry, we're out of time. Lucy Powell, thank you very much indeed.